Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia and Free Range, and I'm here with Thinker2. And we had a very popular show last week, and so we decided to do it again. And today, Thinker2 is going to talk about semantics. But before we do that, maybe you might like to explain why you decided to wear your mask.
Well, I saw a meme of Donald Trump wearing his mask along with everybody else, and you've got a picture of it. Why don't you show it to everybody?
Okay, hang on, let me do that. There it is.
This meme cracked me up so bad, I just had to do it myself.
I know, it was hilarious. I remember when the first time that I saw it, when he had that mask, I was like, oh, right on. Okay, that's about the only kind of mask. And you know, the funny part of it is somebody sent me a picture of my son with a mask on that was kind of like that. Only it had some fancy stuff on the side too. Cracked me up. But anyway, all I said at the time was, that's the only kind of mask you should wear.
Absolutely. The other one will kill you. You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
Carbon dioxide. Oxygen deprivation causes cancer.
Among many other things as well. It also lowers your immunity, and they're coming out with more and more articles about that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a mess. Nobody should be wearing a mask unless they're sick. But
and that's even questionable. That. Yeah.
We've heard. So probably the first word we should start with, and I put this in a lot of my posts, so this may be a review for some folks, is the word government. It's a contraction. It's two words put together. And the second, I don't know if the first one's Latin, and I'll assume that you know what govern means. But I don't think there's many people, unless they've read what I've written, know what mentis means or ment means. It's the root of the word mentis, which is Latin for mind, thought, thinking, or belief. So government is govern mind. It's mind control.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah, to put it bluntly, it's mind control. So the other thing that government is that is not clued in from the word government is that it's a protection racket, because you're paying a bunch of people to be the military to protect you. So if like the FBI, they got out of control, they decide, well, we need some more money and we need some more people. And so they're going to create a problem and they're going to ask you to solve it by giving them more money. And that's what we see in these false flags. If anybody's heard of those, I probably shouldn't be using these words because I'm afraid YouTube is going to censor us even more. But I was just watching Donald Trump signing an executive order taking Twitter to task for censoring the public. So we'll see how that all turns out.
I'm so glad that he is, because they all need to be taken to task, including Facebook, because they do the same thing. They're censoring stuff that shouldn't be censored.
Well, you should see some of the recent interviews with Zuckerberg, because he's backpedaling from his old positions. He says, no, we're not in the business of censoring people anymore. Private
that's
companies
a blatant
shouldn't be
lie.
doing that.
That is
Isn't
a blatant lie.
Yeah. So there's a lot of words that we think are English, but they're not. And, you know, a lot of times they're using Latin because that's the language of law and that's the language of medicine. And it's no mistake that they're using Latin to deceive us, basically, because, you know, the majority of us are not taught Latin. I've not been taught Latin. I've just picked up stuff over the years.
I remember when I was in high school, I had the choice of taking Latin or German, and I kind of opted for German.
Good for you.
Latin is pretty
better
difficult.
Than a dead language.
Yeah.
Latin would have served you in your medical career, but I don't know. So another one is understand. And most people think that the word understand is about comprehension. And it's not. It's actually, when the police and the courts use understand, they're trying to get you into a contract. They want you to accept a verbal contract. So they might say something like, I'm the law, do you understand me? Or when they read Miranda, you know, do you understand these rights as I have read them to you? And if you say yes, you're accepting the contract that they just offered you. And you don't want to do that with them, because they're offering you something other than your unalienable rights. And I don't believe that they can do that lawfully, but they can do it legally. And when you go into a court, it's not a court of law, it's a court of admiralty. See, because of the Civil War and possibly other wars, we're all enemy combatants in this country. And so they treat us as prisoners of war for all intents and purposes, which is how you would have been treated if you lived in Egypt 2,000 years ago and you were conquered by Julius Caesar, is that they would see you as an enemy combatant, a threat to the Roman Empire, and they would treat you accordingly. And that's how we're treated.
So are they up to the same old thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it never stopped. You know, it just keeps, they just morph it from one thing into another. Another one is legal versus lawful. And, you know, I listen to people all the time, and they, you know, is that a lawful order? Well, a legal entity like a corporation can't give you a lawful order because it doesn't rise to the level of law. It's a fiction. It's pretend. It's Munchkin land, and they can't rise. You know, a fiction or a artificial phenomenon like a corporation. You know, it only exists in your head. It exists on paper. It's a pretend thing, and it can't rise to the level of reality. There's no hope for it to ever become real. So the same is true with all of these titles that people assume, like whether they're a policeman or a doctor or an attorney or a judge. All of those are fictions in law, the same way a corporation is a fiction in law.
Are you telling me that all these people are actors?
Yeah. You're cute. Yep, they're acting, but they don't know it. They've lost sight of the fact that they're actors. And they come on to people like they're legitimate and part of the reason that that's possible is because they've deceived us into accepting a similar fictional role. We accept the fictional role of a person or the fictional role of a citizen, okay, which is, you know, the creator didn't create citizens. The creator didn't create persons. He created men and women. He created cats and dogs. He created life and death, electricity and gravity. Okay, but these other things are not lawful, they're legal. And so because there's all these fictions in their scheme, they need a set of rules or regulations to regulate those schemes. And that's what the codes, statutes, and acts are, is they apply to the corporate employees. A policeman is an employee of a corporation. And so the corporation makes rules, whether the entity making the rules is Congress in Washington, D.C., or it's the city council, or it's the state assembly that is making those regulations to say what their employees can and cannot do. But again, they've dragged us in unwittingly, uninformed, you know, without our knowledge or consent. Our parents signed birth certificates and put our information on a birth certificate. And they used that fiction of a birth certificate to create a fiction for us. And the Federal Reserve funded that fiction as a trust, which has millions of dollars in it. And depending upon how you want to look at it, it's their fiction. They own it. Mm-hmm. And when they want it to bring it into court, they will bring it into court. But the police don't know the difference between a man and a trust. They see your name on it. Maybe they do and maybe they don't. I can't say what level of education they have talking to them, they don't know what they're doing. You know, I don't think that they would really, you know, people don't go out to commit mayhem in the morning. It's not in human nature. There's a few of them that we call them psychopaths, but you know, the average policeman is trying to do a good job, but because he's as deceived as we are, he's doing a lousy job because he doesn't know the law. And the Supreme Court has ruled that he doesn't have to know the law. And Judge Sullivan has just demonstrated to us that he doesn't know the law. Either that or he doesn't care. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think he's trying to destroy his career. But that's essentially what he's doing right now by persecuting General Flynn when the Department of Justice has withdrawn the complaint.
Here's something that I've been informed about, and I'm not saying it's specific to the Flynn case, but it is specific to judges at times, and sometimes, depending on who the people are involved, they are told this is how you will rule on this case, and you will take this money, or it'll be your son's life, or something like that, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, so there's lots of extortion and blackmail and all sorts of other weird stuff that goes on. But you don't even have to go that far necessarily. The system itself is corrupt based on the way it's designed. Anything can be made legal. You know, execution is murder in terms of the law. Okay, but it's legal because the government that decided that they're going to execute this person decided that they're not going to persecute or prosecute the person who throws the switch because it's legal. But, you know, people who engage in those behaviors are going to suffer the consequences because the system of law that is superior to the legal system doesn't recognize their innocence. You know, if and, you know, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to suffer illness or some other results of insanity, or they're going to go insane. They're going to become, you know, out of their mind. And this is a large part of the problem with the way that the system is set up and the emphasis that is put on legal versus lawful. I listen to a lot of these YouTube channels that where an attorney will break down a particular case where somebody was abused or pulled over, and you know there's video of both sides, and the attorneys who explain it treat our rights and so forth as if they're abandoned because there's man-made law. And maybe that's the next thing I should explain is, so I pointed out that there's a distinction between what is legal and what is lawful. And the Constitution is supposed to be the law of the land. That's what everybody is supposed to be checked against. That's like the go, no-go gauge for whether or not something is legal. Because if it violates the law, it's supposed to be illegal. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when the police come to your car and they say registration, insurance, and license, okay, they're breaking the law because they've sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. So that's your rights. So when they ask you to present your driver's license, they're asking you to testify against yourself because your driver's license is evidence of something. It's evidence of the corporation. It's evidence of the trust that was created from your birth certificate. Because when you go to the DMV for the first time, you bring your birth certificate and you show them that you are registered with the Federal Reserve and that you're a franchisee of the Federal Reserve.
But they don't tell you that, do they?
No, they don't explain anything.
There was another thing that before we go too far on that, there was another thing that I wanted to bring up and have you explain too, because, you know, I have gone so far as to tell people, well, you're not a person. You don't understand what person is. Walmart can be a person, okay? And then what they'll do is they'll go to Black's Law Dictionary and they'll say, oh, I'm a natural person.
Right, yeah.
And that's just there to just deceived too.
Well, Black's Law
It's
doesn't
deception.
say natural person, but the DMV code says natural person. What Black's Law says is that the person has rank. Okay, so like there's a king and a queen and a bishop, and and there's rank. Okay, they're not talking about the rank in the military, although that fits also. They're just
Sorry.
talking about that they subscribe to a caste system. Okay, and a caste system is feudalism. And they'll even use the word feudalism in Black's Law Dictionary. So there, again, you mentioned that we're talking about the Roman Empire, and it all goes back to the Roman Empire and feudalism and slavery, and they're just perpetuating the same system all over again. Okay, some people look at the MK Ultra, and well, the CIA said that they discontinued that project. They're not doing MK Ultra. Sure they are. They call it Monarch today. They just change the name and do it all over again. Communism's unpopular, so we're going to do socialism instead. It's the same thing. Ultimately, they got to take stuff from people so that they can give it away for free. Well, that's totalitarianism. You can't institute communism or socialism without instituting a principle or a practice of taking people's stuff and giving it away for free. But by the time the government is done divvying it up amongst themselves, there's nothing left for the people who implemented the system in the first place, and they get nothing. So, it's a racket. It's all a racket. It's bait and switch. It's some of the most basic concepts. And this is what the founding fathers were trying to get away from with the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. There is no caste system. We don't accept this belief system. And your rights are given to you by the Creator, and they're unalienable, meaning that they can't be given away, they can't be contracted away. But what does everybody in the media talk about? They talk about civil rights. Well, civil rights occur in civil law, and the Creator doesn't make civil law. Man makes civil law. So if man is making the law, man can change the law. So now you see it, now you don't. You had rights and you don't have them anymore. Just listen to Miranda, you have the right to remain silent, and if you don't talk, we'll beat the crap out of you.
That's unfortunately, because those of us who have made attempts to stand up for what's right and what our rights are supposed to be, our inalienable rights, our unalienable rights, then we get slammed down by cops or put in a jail or any number of things that are totally unjust, not correct, and unlawful. But we're dealing with legalities, not lawfulness. And I don't know what it's going to take to change all that. Do you?
Well, I've tried to figure that out, and I wonder if we have the ability to do that, even with the benefit of Trump and the benefit of the QAnon movement and the Pentagon and whoever it is that is backing up Trump.
The White Hats, the Earth Alliance.
Yeah, I don't know that that's enough to make it happen, which is why my money is on this ascension that we've been told about by David Wilcock and Corey Good. And
far many more than him. Yeah, far more than just them.
That phenomenon, if we have the ability to recognize that we're being lied to instinctively, like a sixth sense, then, they can't pull us into that phenomenon anymore. They can't pull us into that deception anymore. So I don't hold out a lot of faith that man can solve this problem. The way Einstein put it is that a problem can't be solved at the same level at which it was created. So you have to rise to a new level of understanding before you can extricate yourself from the problem of the legal versus the lawful. Because there's, as long as there's psychopaths running around on the earth there's going to be people who are going to be manipulating the law and turning it into legal.
Well, you know, what's interesting about what you just said is, you know, I had done some videos before with Iana and Saint Germain and some of the background that goes with that. And one of the things that comes up is that Washington was given 3 visions, okay, and then of the trauma that America would go through. Well, in the 3rd vision, it required divine intervention. That's where we're at. Because you're right. I don't think man can change this system. They can even try to restructure it, but it's so corrupt. I don't even know if it can be restructured and fixed.
Well, yeah. So, you know, that's why I'm holding out hope for the ascension, you know, 5th density, high 4th density. You know, I see that as a way out, but,
that means people need to wake up, doesn't it? And raise the vibration.
A part of it. I mean, the people who don't wake up get to stay in 3rd density, you know, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
I wouldn't either. Get me out of here.
If people aren't going to wake up and take responsibility for their behavior, you know, there's very little hope of moving forward. And I just posted the other day, I call it the science of thinking. The video has its own name for it, but it's a process that we are not shown in current day education of how to take responsibility for our thoughts and our feelings and our ego and our joy. And we just sort of let them run willy-nilly, like we're not responsible for them. And what this video touches on, and what the other references that I include in the piece that I put on, what's the website called, Gail?
Disclosure or
Operation Disclosure. So I posted an Operation Disclosure, and you can look at that material. It took me, you know, 5 years to go through all that material. So it's not the kind of thing that you necessarily want to start right now, but you know, it's something that everybody should be trying to pay attention to and raise their level of consciousness and responsibility for their thoughts and feelings. And it's an uncommon phenomenon, but it's something that, you know, people like Buddha and other thinkers spent their time on to find a solution to. And I spent a lot of time on it. And the thing that I recognize is that before you can go on a journey like that, you have to recognize that there's a problem. And you have to be able to distinguish between cancer and a gunshot wound in order to know what it is that you're trying to solve. And so one of the things that I start with is trying to get everybody to recognize that we've all been lied to, we've all been deceived, and we need to start waking up and recognizing the ways in which we're deceived so that we have choice in terms of where we want to go from here, and find a new opportunity for advancement, because we're not going to get it from the church. We're not going to get it from our institutes of higher learning. They don't teach it. They deliberately deprive us of it because they want us as their chattel property. They don't want us to be educated. And they educate the elite children, but they go to different schools than you and I get to go to. So it's a scheme, it's a racket.
Yeah, everything's rigged, right?
Well, welcome to America.
Well, it's not just America, actually. It's, the entire planet.
Yeah, it's the whole world. But I mean, thank God Donald Trump is booting out, the United Nations and the WHO and some of these institutions that are
CDC is another one that needs to be kicked in the butt.
Yeah, the CIA,
the FDA, all of the alphabet letter.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's kicking Twitter and Google and Facebook. letting them know that they're no longer protected, they're no longer shielded by the clause. Again, it's part of establishing a corporation, and you get a bunch of rules, and then the judges will treat you as though you have immunity. I heard recently that Cuomo gave immunity to the executives of all of the senior centers where they murdered 1,700 people by putting COVID patients back into the senior home.
He did that on purpose. That was so evil.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, why else? Why do they need immunity? Are they doing something wrong? I mean, is that a clue?
Darkness runs deep in that one. Yeah, that's just some of you know what? One of the things that's happening that I see is that the governors are being shown their true colors by what's going on, and Trump is allowing them to do that. And I think the biggest problem that I see is that people don't question the media more. I guess they do some. It's improved somewhat, but it's just like they try to take anything that Trump says, they twist it around, and they make it into something totally different than what he originally intended.
Right. Yeah, and that's just their way of browbeating the issue and deceiving people who are still liberally minded and think that, I mean, it's really is a war, and there are two sides, and we do have two governments. Okay, we have a legitimate government under Donald Trump, which is what the Constitution established, and he's following the Constitution. But we also have this fascist government, and I'm not pulling any punches when I say it's fascist. And if you haven't seen the symbol for fascism, you don't know what to look for. But as Q has said, their symbols will be their downfall. Well, if you look at a picture of the Lincoln Memorial, Abraham Lincoln has his arms resting on two fasci. And if you get a mercury dime or find the image of a mercury dime on Google, on the flip side, from 1916 to 1945, there's a fasci. And it's camouflaged with a laurel leaf or wreath or something like that. And again, if you look at the walls of Congress, there's two fasci, one on either side of the podium. And I've tried to point this out to folks all the time. So there's another interesting area that we could look at in terms of language. For the longest time, I didn't understand what the difference was between a republic and a democracy.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one to explain.
A lynching is a democratic process. So, you watch the Western, and the sheriff is trying to prevent the townspeople from lynching the guy that they think is guilty. He's attempting to introduce the republic, which is that the guy gets a trial. The guy gets to defend himself. The guy gets to tell his side of the story, and it may be found that he is guilty, but at least he gets to explain his side. Okay, we have to look at whether or not he broke the law or not. What did he do? Okay, and what was his circumstance? Okay, because what republic introduces is the rule of law. And I hear attorneys, including Sidney Powell and others, and they like to say the rule of law, but they don't say what the rule of law is. So I say that the rule of law is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which were all inspired by the Golden Rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that's law from my perspective, as opposed to if you don't wear your seatbelt, you have to pay a fine. Okay, because one of the principles in law is if there's no harm to people and there's no harm to property, then there's no violation in law. There's a violation in statute, there's a violation in regulation, there's you've committed an infraction, okay, but there's no violation in law. And those principles apply to a corporation. And so what they've done to us is they've made us corporations, they've made us a trust, a franchise, a franchisee of the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve funded our Social Security account with thousands or millions of dollars. I don't know what the amounts are. Okay, but even if all they put in was $1, the point is what they're doing is they're guaranteeing any debts that we might incur. Okay. So if I were to kick off tomorrow and not have the means to pay for my own funeral, the Federal Reserve would reimburse the funeral parlor for the expense of disposing of my body. If my wife helped a woman and her husband with the death of their son, a policeman shot and killed her son, and she wanted to go to the hospital and find out what the hospital had done for her son. And because the hospital had rendered medical care, they wanted to be able to pay for it. And before they would provide any information, the mother had to provide his first name, his the name of the trust, the first name of the trust, the last name of the trust, the date of birth, and the Social Security number. And then they would give out the information about what happened to her son. Okay, but they want to get paid. It's all about the hospital getting paid. And they know how to charge the account.
Isn't that true about the prison system and jail system as well?
Yeah, whether it's a private for-profit prison or it's a non-profit prison, the state is paying for it. The state knows how to collect the money from the Federal Reserve System. Even if you're
doesn't the county as well? The county too?
Yeah. All the government is set up to collect this money. I mean, they all know how to access these funds. That's what it's set up for. Here in California, if you go to the emergency room, there's a big sign that says that you can't be turned away. And the reason you can't be turned away is because if you don't have the means to pay, you don't have insurance or whatever it is, the trust account that was created by the Federal Reserve will pay for whatever the expenses are, and the hospital knows that. And that's why they are required to have that sign there that says that even if you can't pay, they still have to treat you. So it's supposed to be a good thing, okay? But the problem is that we are more valuable to the government dead than we are alive, because what happens to that money when we're deceased? Where does the balance of that account go?
Well, and people seem to think that everything comes from taxes, and that's not true either.
No, based on my understanding and my research, all of the tax money goes to the bank in the City of London. I don't know if it goes to the British bank or another bank, the Bank of England, but from there they take out 40%, I believe it is, and the other 60% goes to the Vatican. But none of that money pays for any services or any benefits here in this country. All of that stuff is paid for from other sources. And you know where the police get their police cruisers and their helicopters and their armored vehicles. They get all that from parking tickets and speeding tickets and infraction tickets. And they've turned, you know, our right to travel into a privilege and protection racket where they're collecting money by citing everybody that does, you know, forgets to put their seatbelt on or uses their cell phone or whatever it is.
God forbid, doesn't have a driver's license.
Well, again, you don't want to hand that to the police. You want to point out to them that, you know, I can't give that to you because I know that the information on that is false. I am not a trust, okay? I'm a human being. And they want you to represent the trust. They want you to go in court and protest because you're actually breaking the law by doing that.
This is the thing that people have a hard time wrapping their head around, and that is the all-cap name that is on your birth certificate, that is on all legal documents, that's on a driver's license, is not you.
No.
It's the trust. But they have us convinced that it is us. And My dog is chasing her tail. Anyway, I guess that's what we're all doing. But anyway,
they conditioned us all through grade school and all through, high school and all through college that that's our name. It's not your name. It's the name of the trust, especially when it's all uppercase. So, and as I mentioned in the previous video, there's another word, affiliation.
yes, I remember the first time you told me that. I don't have a name, I have an affiliation.
Yeah, right. Watch the judge's eyeballs roll around inside of his head. I went into court and they called my case and I say, objection, Your Honor, assumes facts, not an evidence. The name on the citation is not me. Okay, I'm not the person. Okay, it's a person. Okay, a trust is a person, a corporation is a person, but it's not me. That is and I told him, but he didn't care, or he didn't know. I don't know if he knew or if he didn't care. And he extorted $1,000 out of me.
This is the way we've been doing it for however long, and this is the way it is going to continue. And no matter what you say or how right you are, that's the way it is. That's the attitude.
That's what they're going to do, because they've been getting away with murder for years. That's why I call them a mafia.
And that's why it's so important for people to wake up to these facts, because until they do, it just perpetuates the problem.
Yeah, can you imagine if every person pulled over tomorrow refused to show their driver's license or any of their documents? Because none of the documents are made out to you. They're all made out to the trust. And no business wants to do business with you. If you go buy insurance, they're not giving you the insurance. They're giving the trust the insurance, because they put your name in all uppercase on your insurance policy. They put your name in all uppercase on your registration for your vehicle. You don't own your vehicle. It's the property of the state. They gave you title for it. You have permission to use it. And if we want to take away your permission, we will.
Right, and then if you try not to do it, like put on private property or something like that, it's like you're stopped at every turn. And part of the problem is we need more people to know the truth about these matters in order for this to ever change or get better.
Well, and my experience of talking to the police about it is that they don't know. And when they realize that they've been deceived, they start to have a different attitude about it. Not that they're going to change their behavior. They might go a little easier on you because they know that that they're breaking the law. But if you don't point out to them that they're breaking the law, they're operating in their delusion. They're operating in the belief that everything that they do is justified and correct because that's what's reinforced by their employer and by the courts.
Speaking of the courts,
I might have to cut this short. Can you put it on pause?
Sure. Hang on. Pause. Okay, you can continue from where you left off.
Okay, so when I encountered this judge and I told him I'm not the person whose name appears on the citation, he made me sit down. He cleared the courtroom by going through all the other cases ahead of mine. And then he invited not one, not two, but 3 sheriffs into the room.
Intimidation.
He got rid of two people who had cancer, whose cases he dismissed because they told him that they had cancer. Okay. And I took my father-in-law with me, who was 94 years old, and they even tried to get him to leave the room. Okay. So this is how leery they are of somebody who knows what's going on.
Well, they want to make sure nobody else finds out about it. That's why they clear the courtroom. And you're not alone in that, because I know several other people that they did the exact same thing to.
Yeah.
And
if bringing 3 sheriffs with guns into the room is not intimidation, please tell me what it is. Okay. Yeah. He wanted to arrest me for contempt. Okay. I didn't give him the satisfaction of being contemptuous, but it was obvious to me that he's a criminal, because only a criminal would behave that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is why I have no respect for judges and police. It's not because I don't respect them as human beings. It's because they don't practice what they talk about. They don't practice what they were employed to do. But I mean, that's the whole problem with the DOJ and the FBI and the whole lot, is that they've all abandoned what they're supposed to be doing and decided to engage in criminal activity. So that's,
but they don't think it's criminal activity. They think it's legal.
Well, and technically, I suppose it is legal, but when legal violates the law, it's supposed to be illegal.
Exactly.
But they don't measure what they're doing with law. They've completely abandoned law, and I guess that's why Sidney Powell wrote her book of Fixing Justice.
License to Lie, wasn't it, or is that another one?
I think that's another one. Okay. Yeah, she's got two, but one of them is Fixing Justice, and she wants to restore justice in America. There's a lot of people who want to restore justice in America, and we're getting a lot of people who would vote liberal over onto that side where we want to restore justice and treat people as though they have rights instead of as though they're serfs, because that's how we are right now. We're all a bunch of serfs.
Yep.
And once you get to the point where you're retired, you're a useless eater from the point of view of our elected officials, because they're not making the money off of us that they were when we were paying our taxes and Social Security and all those funds. And that's how they pay for the senior centers and the senior meal programs and stuff. They pay for that out of your Social Security account too. And, I take my father-in-law to the senior center and they say, we need your donations. I said, no, you don't. You're getting money out of the Federal Reserve. That's why I have to fill out a form in order to get a meal here, because you need all that information so that you can go and deduct the funds from my trust account before it's transferred to the federal government. And that's what your elected representative is doing in the House. He's administering your account.
And you can't do it yourself. Isn't that amazing?
Well, you're incompetent. That's why you need the judge to assign you a public defender.
Explain that.
Because you're incompetent. Well, of course you're incompetent. I don't even know what the words are that you're using because you're speaking Latin. Speak English. So, it's disgusting.
Well, isn't that as soon as you employ an attorney that technically you're considered a ward of the state?
Yeah. Well, you're a ward of the state before you employ an attorney.
But you know what I'm getting at, though. I mean,
but you're incompetent.
Incompetence.
He was incompetent. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's what recently I've been hearing people talk about the nanny state, because the governors like Newsom and the woman in Michigan and so on, they're trying to nanny us with COVID-19, and we don't need to be nannied. We're perfectly capable of taking care of ourselves. We need you to stop imposing your tyranny. Mm-hmm. Okay, because that's what they're doing by making people who are healthy wear masks. They're imposing tyranny.
Finally, there are a lot of doctors that are coming out and explaining how unhealthy that actually is.
Did you see the email I sent you about the indictment of Fauci and Gates and the Rothschilds and others? I sent you a link. I don't think I put it on Operation Disclosure, but I will, so that other people can see it. But there is supposedly there's going to be a hearing on June 5th for Fauci and Gates and a host of others involved in COVID-19 for treason. And the evidence that they're offering is those two doctors from Fresno who came out and showed that the statistics were not in line with shutting down the state. Yeah, that it was totally ridiculous what was being done, as a result of COVID-19.
There was some guy, I don't remember who it was either, who challenged Fauci about what he was saying in terms of the statistics that he was using and the way he was manipulating the numbers, because they make the automatic assumption that the vast majority of people don't have a clue about all that. And so therefore they can lie, they can stack the numbers and get away with it.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I like to point out a lot too, you know, we think that the leading cause of deaths in America is cancer, but it's not. The leading cause of death in America is cancer. The reason it doesn't come up as the leading cause of death is because the statistics are divided in two. There's a category for people who died by taking their pharmaceuticals as prescribed, and they separated that from the people who died as a result of mismanagement or misuse in a hospital setting or some other setting where they use the wrong dosage or whatever mishap. But I've witnessed, you know, 5 attempts on my father-in-law's life because he's a useless eater. He's 94 years old, and the first doctor had him on 26 different medications at the same time. And I'd go with him to his doctor, and he'd have his shoebox full of all of his pharmaceuticals, and the doctor would pull one out and look at it and say, yeah, you need to take that. He'd pull out another, yeah, you take that. You don't need to take that. And he'd put it back in the box. And he'd only look at about 5 of the, 28 different things that he was taking. And my father-in-law doesn't speak English, so he doesn't know what the doctor's saying. He doesn't know that he's supposed to stop taking that particular medicine. We finally found, I'm insisted that my wife get him another doctor. He got him down to 3 medications. And then he had a minor stroke, and our dog alerted us that he had had a mini stroke. And we put him in a nursing home for about 3 months. And he went completely downhill. The reason we put him in there was so that he could get physical therapy. Instead of physical therapy, they brought him back up to 13 different medications. My wife had to go back to the doctor who got him down to 3, okay, and demand his patient back. We took him to the emergency room, and his blood sugar was 500. It's supposed to be below 100, okay? Then, it's just one situation like that after another with my poor father-in-law, where these people are not treating him right.
I've seen it. I used to work in hospitals and nursing homes, and I used to be absolutely appalled at the list of medications.
Yeah.
And to think, and all those medications, I don't care which one it is, they all have side effects. You take one medication, it has this side effect, and so then you take this other medication to counteract that side effect, and it's like a snowballing effect.
Yes.
And
well, the basic
horrific.
thing that you have to understand, okay, we're talking about patent medicine. All pharmaceuticals are patented.
I know.
Including hydrochloroquine. You can't patent natural things. You can't patent vitamin C. Okay? It has to be poison in order to be patented. Because if it's not natural, it's poison.
What I used to tell people, and this is exactly what's done, they'll take a substance, an active ingredient in some plant or what have you, and they will tweak it chemically in such a way they'll change a hydroxyl group or a oxygen group or nitrogen or whatever, and they change it, and then they can get a patent because it's not natural anymore.
It's artificial.
Exactly. Right. Synthetic.
Yes. Well, what they've done by stripping out the active ingredient is they've removed all the buffers.
Exactly.
And because there's no buffers to remediate the undesirable symptoms, okay, that's why everybody has these side effects. If they took the natural plant or the natural substance, assuming its foundation is based on something natural, okay, they wouldn't have the side effects. But they can't make any money off of that. So
Exactly.
again,
That's
it's
why.
another.
That's why you'll never see them promote IV vitamin C, IV hydrogen peroxide, IV uh, light injection, or these different things that work and are natural, but they're not pharmaceutical. And our MD, the medical establishment, is pushed by the pharmaceutical companies.
Right. Yeah. It's all changing though, and most people don't see it. You have to look rather closely in order to see that some of these things are changing, but they are in the process of changing, which is what gives me hope for the future.
Yes, same here.
But
Same here.
I've been doing this for 25 years now. I started with the Waco, Texas, and the Branch Davidians, and telling my coworkers that it wasn't right for the FBI to go in there with guns blazing. That was absurd. And they thought I was defending the Branch Davidians. I said, no, I'm not saying that the Branch Davidians are right. I'm saying that I don't want my government kicking down my door because they think I have too many guns or whatever it is that, it's, I almost got fired for that, but they laid me off a few months later.
I was, I was called a conspiracy theorist, and I know that I didn't get a teaching job that continued the next year because of that.
Yeah.
So you pay a price for. Yeah, you pay a price.
I know I'm on a watch list. This isn't fooling the FBI or the local police department or anything like that. That's not what this is for. This is because I live in a liberal state. I don't want some liberal coming and knocking on my door.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. Okay, I guess I have the same issue. I know I'm watched. I know. It's just if you're, and it's okay. I really don't care, because what's right is right, and the truth is the truth. Okay, and everyone has a right to their opinion. Everyone has a right to say what they think is right, or if you can back it up, but it's it is right, it's the truth. But
those are our unalienable rights, and you respect my unalienable rights, and I respect your unalienable rights. But don't go into a courtroom and expect to get any unalienable rights, because they're only civil rights in a court of law.
Right. And you are that all capital name.
That's right. You don't have an affiliation.
And if you say that you're not, you will go to jail. I had a judge tell me that. You're either you're Gail Ross or you're going to jail. No, that's not me. Well, yes, it is. And I'm going, okay, whatever. I guess I don't. You can't. What can you say? It's. I admire and appreciate people who do challenge the system, who do speak up and let it be known that they know, because it's the only way that other people find out too. And the more people that know, the better off we are. That's why I appreciate some of the things you do, some of the paperwork you put together, even trying to educate the cops. I mean, it's not their fault that they're not taught the truth.
Right. Yeah, and I've seen their reactions to the information that I've given them. The sergeant who said, "Oh, I know you're not a sovereign citizen." Well, that's an oxymoron.
I know.
I'm looking for an oxymoron. I'm looking for a policeman that'll defend my rights. You know where I can find one? Because you're obviously not it.
Exactly. Okay. Well, you know what? I think we're coming up on. I didn't check the time exactly, but it's been a while, so I think we might want to wrap this one up. And
so you're not getting any questions yet, huh?
Actually, I don't think we really put too much out there asking for questions, and we can do that this time. And hopefully we'll get some questions, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, or people can post stuff in the comments.
Or they can ask questions in the comments too, and we can try to cover some of them on the next show or something like that. I don't always have time to go over people's questions.
No, I'm not asking you to. I just figured that they can put them in the comments.
Yes, that would be great. That would be great, and then we can look at them before the show or whatever, and you can address some of them.
Good deal. Thank you, Gail.
Well, thank you, Thinker2. We appreciate your candid
I'll see if I
explanation.
can remain mysterious.
Yes. And you might want to, just before we go, we didn't really cover it in the beginning this time. Well, I guess we did with the covering with the mask or so on. But I would encourage people to be aware of the information that's coming out on wearing masks now. And is it really protecting you? Chances are
Right.
it's not. It's
No.
actually impairing your immune system, reducing your oxygen levels, increasing your chances of getting sick, actually, especially when you're wearing it outside. And, you know, it's just, anyway, I hope people will think of that. And
yeah, and it's not our opinion. The doctors have weighed in with exactly the same information. Even
thank
Dr.
you.
Fauci was recommending not to wear a mask for the general public. Only people who were sick should be wearing masks. But you know, he got reversed on that because he reports to a higher power. It's not that higher than he is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and your information.
My
And
pleasure.
we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Okay, good.
It's a wrap.
Want to